All right, so today we are going to go over the basics of how to generate and 3D print terrain. And the final product looks something like this. So I've always thought that this is pretty interesting. It's something that when I give to my kids, they can understand it a little bit better rather than just a map. I can point at this and I can say, hey, this mountain right here is that mountain over there. And they can start to understand a little bit more about just kind of geography and things like that. So where I like to start every time I've done this is Google. And I always just type in right here, you can see terrain to STL. And the reason for that is because some of these sites and resources that I use, the URL isn't exactly the easiest to remember, but Google can reliably get you there. So I've used this JT Hatch quite a bit, but I've also more recently found this Touch Terrain, and it looks like it's an Iowa State resource here, and this is the one that we are going to be using. So go ahead and click on that, and it'll automatically kind of put you here on a map in what appears to be the middle of nowhere. So I'm going to back up, and it's in the northern central part of Wyoming. So I apologize for anybody up there, but I was right when I said the middle of nowhere. Sorry. And we're going to zoom in here on Utah County. These are the local mountains to where I'm at, and one that I've hiked a handful of times is Mount Timpanogos. You can kind of see it here right behind the kind of the overlay that they've put on that. Now, the nice thing about the Iowa State resource is you can just resize this box to pretty much anything you want. So that's what we're going to do. We're interested in primarily printing this mountain. There's a couple of canyons around it and everything like that. So some of the options over here are how big do you want it to be? Of course, you can scale that in your slicing program differently. Your nozzle diameter, which is really just about this same resolution, or talking about the resolution that you've got there. Then you can change how many tiles you want to print it in. This is going to be easily manageable by the Ender 3 that we have here. And so we're going to leave it at 1 by 1. Now, one thing that I prefer to do is I will usually double the vertical scale. It accentuates the mountains a little bit more. If you leave it at 1, they look it's true to scale, but it's not as interesting. It doesn't kind of, as you can see here, make them pop as much, and it's not as easy to kind of get an idea of what the terrain is like. And so that's pretty much how we're going to set it there. You can go ahead and fiddle with some of these things. Maybe you want to exaggerate it more or less depending on how aggressive the mountains are that you're trying to print. So I'm going to export. Here's a nice little steam engine they've got going on over here. And it's all there. Now I can go ahead and use this to preview what it's going to look like. And yeah, that's about how I want it to look. So we'll download that zip file and we'll pull it into the slicer. Okay, so we have pulled the STL file here into Cura, and we're gonna kind of go through some of the options here of what you want to do. I think I want it to be just a little bit bigger, so we'll go with 150 on the scale there. And then one thing you can also do is it automatically puts in, it raises it up. In my instance, I had it set at about 1 millimeter. Sometimes if you're interested, if you just want the mountains, you can go ahead and drop this in and get rid of some of that base. So you can see as it starts to fill in the canyon there, that's below the build plane. It's not going to print that. And this is how we're actually going to print it here. So for my quality, I have it set at 0.2 with an initial layer of 0.32. The shell, I believe I've got 2 walls. And sometimes, depending on how aggressive the mountains are, they will, you'll start to see it peeking through unless you have a couple of shells there. And infill, I have it set at 10%. And so really nothing too fancy or elaborate here. Let's go ahead and slice it. I know it's going to tell me that it's going to take a little while, but it's interesting to see once you've sliced it, just kind of how the different layers are going to come in from the bottom to the top. Okay, so it looks like it's going to take about 6 hours for this to print. Let's look at the preview. And you can see right there, it's going to be 183 layers. And looks good to me. So we'll go ahead and we will get that sent over to the printer and get that started.
All right, the model is done here. It's still sitting on the build plate. There's a few stringiness issues on the very, very thin peaks and things like that. That is one of the problems with the Hatchbox wood PLA. When you run it a little bit hotter than you should, I should have run it a few degrees cooler than I did.
So I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. This took about 5 hours to print. There are some advanced techniques that you could implement to shave some of that time down, but with that, you should have all of the tools and resources you need to get online, to find a section of a map with some interesting terrain, and to turn it into a 3D printed model that you can show people.